Guys, what is up? It is me, the political kid, and today we're going to be talking about something that you guys requested. What if William McKinley, the president who was assassinated, survived his assassination attempt? So the way we're going to work with this is that William McKinley, like the shooter that shot him, missed because even if, like, the chance of him surviving while also being shot during this time is pretty low since medical equipment was terrible, so we're just gonna run with that. Hey, it's been a while, but I just want to say I'm kinda back, I guess. I might try to get a new editor as my editor right now isn't as available right now. So if you want to sign up, you know the deal. Email, all that stuff, and you don't need that much requirements. Just have moderate to good editing skills. Like if you're able to do like what an average YouTuber can, that's the best thing I could hope for. But anyway, so William McKinley was a Republican president from the late 1800s to the early 1900s, 1897 to 1901. He won 1896 and 1900, but he was assassinated by an anarchist in Buffalo, New York. Uh, this led to the more progressive Theodore Roosevelt coming into power, and now, based on that kind of situation, we have all the presidents that followed, all the politics, all of that. Now, if William McKinley wasn't assassinated in 1904, uh, Theodore Roosevelt would not become or not run for president or win for president. The reason being is that many people in New York, when Theodore Roosevelt had a very political position in New York, set him up for the vice presidency in 1900 because the vice presidency at that time was kind of seen as a like peak like politics retirement thing, kind of the all and all for people who wouldn't become president but were influential in politics. So people expected him to not really do much afterwards. And in this timeline, uh, William McKinley would still not like him that much, and the Republicans would probably not nominate Theodore Roosevelt again, or Theodore Roosevelt. We could see whoever else, but I can't really predict who would win the nomination. However, they would probably go on to win in 1904 and 1908. In 1912, William Taft, who would still be a rising figure and probably would be a Secretary of Defense or Secretary of War like in our timeline and probably be running for president, and he would probably win as the Republicans were still popular. It was conservative times. 1912 1914, I mean, the Great War would start, there'd be a lot of tension, but Republicans and Democrats both at the time were very isolationist when it came to the Great War. Only like progressives like Theodore Roosevelt really wanted to go to Europe to show them what America could do to them, but nobody was really interested at the time to go to war. So William Taft would probably run in 1912 and 1916, both winning, leading to an isolationist policy. And I would say that they would probably eventually go to war, but because of the different foreign policy that since we don't have Wilson, we wouldn't have a Wilsonian interventionist policy, so we would probably still declare war on Germany because of the Zimmermann telegram and the Lusitania being sunk still, but it would probably be in late 1917, wearing down a lot of Entente morale and then boosting it up, probably pushing the war to end in around early 1919 instead of late 1918. This wouldn't cause much, however, since the Republicans had control of the Congress and presidency, there wouldn't really be a debate on a League of Nations since the Republicans opposed it. And the League of Nations would kind of be an out of reach thing for the Americans, being more just European colonial defense. And this would cause not a lot of more isolationism, especially in the interwar period. William Taft would retire, and in 1920, I could definitely still see Warren Harding winning the nomination, him dying in 1923. I I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that because there's a lot of conservative Republicans, they would at least try to make a progressive Republican like Hiram Johnson to be vice president instead of Calvin Coolidge. So instead of Calvin Coolidge taking up the arms, Hiram Johnson, who was almost like Theodore Roosevelt 2.0, would become the president in 1923, go on to win in 1924 because Robert La Follette would even give him more support, and would retire in 1928. I would suggest that maybe, perhaps, Hiram Johnson would run again, considering that um, Calvin Coolidge is not like Hiram Johnson, and since Hiram Johnson only had a partial term in the first term that he had, he'd probably run again. So in 1928, Hiram Johnson would probably run and win because the Great Depression hasn't happened yet, but now it has. And with a progressive thinker like him, he would, with the Republicans and his progressive ideals, he would solve the Great Depression probably fairly well. I mean, probably better than FDR and Hoover. However, it wouldn't be great, and since it still is a Great Depression, Democrats would get a lot of support. However, since Hiram Johnson is a progressive, and that means that people would start disliking progressives, I could see more conservative Democrats like John Nance Garner getting more support within the Democratic nomination. This would probably cause John Nance Garner to win in 1932, win in 1936, hand it over to, I guess, maybe Roosevelt if he wanted to try again, which honestly, with his track record, I bet Roosevelt would actually run in 1940 instead of 1932 or 1936, considering that Roosevelt had a lot of stress because of the Great Depression times, and without that stress, he probably actually lived longer, allowing him to win the 1940 and 1944 election, heading into the Second World War. Uh, However, he wouldn't have the baggage of winning the second. I mean, without claiming victory over the Great Depression, conservative Democrats would still be popular, but to kind of moderate things, they'd probably choose Franklin Roosevelt for 1940, 1944. They'd obviously win in World War II. However, with more harsh terms on Germany during the World War One peace conference because of Wilson not being there, there would probably be less deaths, and World War II would be less impactful in this timeline. So yeah. Uh, anyway, in 1944, there'd be a big debate since, I mean, the Democrats were popular, but the Republicans were also one of the ones who tried to go isolationist and were only pushed because of Pearl Harbor. And in this timeline, World War II would not be as popular because it was like everybody's deal. So winning World War II wouldn't be as popular as for the Democrats then it would be. I could definitely see Harry Truman running in 1948. And however, in this timeline, Thomas Dewey would probably win since the Republicans are way more popular. And yeah, Thomas Dewey would win in 1948, lose in 1952 because he wouldn't try, and he'd probably hand it off to Robert Taft. and Robert Taft would lose to Adlai Stevenson. Yeah, that's right. We somehow got Adlai Stevenson to win 1952. What a surprise. But due to more of these policies and being more liberal, he would pass way more national infrastructure initiatives, making him more popular, the Democrats more popular. And however, there would be some trouble because, I mean, Eisenhower would kind of push against Adlai Stevenson, try to run in 1956, since Adlai Stevenson's party was popular, and the liberal agenda in this timeline would be more popular at this time. Adlai Stevenson would run for re-election and win. John F. Kennedy would win in 1960, still die in 1963. LBJ would succeed him. However, due to more liberal support, he would win in 1964. Obviously, not win in 1968. However, without Nixon, I could definitely see Mitt Romney's dad, who was popular, actually winning the Republican nomination in 1968, beating Hubert Humphrey instead of Nixon, because Nixon wouldn't be as popular. Mitt Romney's dad would win in 1972. I believe that, or I think his name was George Romney, I can't forget, but I believe that he probably wouldn't have the corruption that Nixon had, and due to this, Republicans would still be popular. And since George Romney was more a liberal Republican, being less conservative, they'd probably want a moderate, so they would probably still run Gerald Ford, who wouldn't be vice president, but would have a large influence in the Congress and would run in 1976. Due to this, Jimmy Carter would lose, and all the issues that came along with the late 1970s would still happen. However, due to this, Gerald Ford would not be as popular. So I could definitely see Ted Kennedy winning in 1980, winning re-election in 1984. George Bush Sr. would probably win in 1988, as the Democrats wouldn't be as popular then. And 1992, I could see Bill Clinton doing the same thing in our timeline. In 1996, Bill Clinton. In 2000, maybe Al Gore. But due to the more popularity for the Republicans, I would still say that George Bush would win. Due to this, win re-election in 2004, the 2008 election would be way more contested, as since Republicans are way more popular, and yeah, obviously, and since it wasn't a total landslide. However, for Obama, he did win by a lot, so I would still assume that Obama would win in 2008, but just by a little less electoral votes in a win. So he would win in 2012 against Mitt Romney, who has the support of his dad being the former president, and it would be even closer. And 2016, I do not think that someone like Trump would be able to rise to political office, because the less corruption, less all that, and just less fear within the American public, I feel that Trump wouldn't be nominated. He might run, but he probably wouldn't be nominated, as I could definitely see maybe Jeb Bush running. I would hope for Marco Rubio, as he would probably beat Hillary Clinton. And in 2020, Biden would win, as he was still the vice president for Obama. And in 2024, without Trump's more negative qualities with his personal life, and Biden and the Democrats having large losses within the 2020s, Republicans would have a way more grounded victory in 2024. I don't think it would be Rubio, though. I do not know who, but it would be someone. Peak fiction. Whatever. I mean, this honestly seems like a better timeline because we don't have Wilson, but yeah, just because one guy assassinated another guy, we got this timeline. So, based on that fact, every political thing in our world matters in a sense. So, be politically active, try not to be like biased towards one thing, and just be aware. Vote whoever you want. I don't care if you vote Democrat, Republican, or support third parties. Just be yourself and try to debate people on your views so you could help people get a better understanding, but also be aware of other people's views. I'm a political kid. Yes, I'm a kid. And I'm out. Hopefully not for 2 weeks.